Hello and welcome. I'm Julie Fogel, the Director of Marketing at Kiriworks, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, Beyond the Universe, Non-Regulatory Reporting. Now, while being able to report on CMS universes is obviously essential for appeals and grievances departments, having the ability to produce out-of-the-box reports and view interactive dashboards provides valuable insight into that day-to-day A&G inventory. And today we'll show you how easy it is to build, customize, and share reports in the Kiriworks Appeals and Grievances solution to provide that increased visibility into your A&G processes. Before I introduce today's presenters, I have a quick housekeeping item. We've muted everyone's microphones, but we do want to make sure you're able to engage with us. So please utilize the chat box to drop any questions on the topic or share struggles and experiences as they resonate with you throughout today's presentation. We'll be monitoring these throughout the session and address questions at the end. We're also recording today's webinar and we'll share a link to the session for you to revisit and share with colleagues. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Dan Smith joins us, and he's been with us for the past 6 years, serving as Kiriworks Senior Sales Engineer, singular, he's not two people, providing for us his expertise of more than 17 years of experience implementing OnBase and Kiriworks solutions in the payer-provider space. Welcome, Dan. And then John Swisher joins us. He first came to us in Dan's role as a Senior Sales Engineer in 2014. He's since held various roles within solution development before becoming our VP of Product and Sales in December of 2020. Welcome, John. Dan, let's get started.
Thank you, Julie. Today we're going to be doing a short PowerPoint, but really we're going to dive into the actual software and show you the reports that we have canned within the solution. But again, we're going to be doing this under the Appeals and Grievances umbrella within our solution here. So focusing on that reporting aspect within the solution. So do you ask yourself, what is your current inventory of cases today? What do you have due today, tomorrow, 30 days from now? What is in your system? Do you have those insights into your cases? Can you report on that easily? And what are those historical volumes of that data? So if maybe your analysts or your users are complaining about being overworked, maybe you don't have insight into that data to hire additional staff. With our solution, we definitely have those answers for you. Every field within the solution is reportable with our built-in reporting tool that we call dashboards. That includes any of those integration points. So if you integrated with your claim system, with your auth system, members, providers, we can report and bring that back into easily readable reports and interactive dashboards. And then the solution is built on a point-and-click configurable dashboard and what we call filters, where we can allow the end users, based on user groups and rights, to create their own reports. So it's very, there's some, you can go in and do more SQL reporting if you want to have IT do it, but you can use those out-of-box reports to easily build your own reports off of. So when we built the A&G solution, we had reporting in mind. From intake to working the cases, we built the solution where there's not much manual entry. We use data sets, calculated dates, calculated times. We really drive the user through the workflow and not allow them to deviate from that and allow any manual entry. So that really helps with reporting. So you're not getting grievance spelled 5 different ways in there. You just choose grievance from a drop down, and we know exactly in the system, what we're reporting on. So we don't have to go in and fix any of that later on. So focusing on the details really provides that big overall picture with our reports. So with our canned report of what's due within 72 hours, current activities or current inventory of all of those data elements we have in the system, grievances broken down by date, time, user, having watermarks so we know we're staying within that threshold, and then showing our users or our managers current activities that are due, and putting them in color coded so that we can easily look at the ones that are due today or overdue. We could dive in directly to the case from these reports and find a resolution as fast as possible.
Hey Dan, real quick before you move forward, two quick things. One of them, and this one's not as serious, but you had those two slides. There was, do you ask yourself? And we have the answers for you, right? And we haven't seen any questions in the webinar as of yet because we're just getting started. But in case you're asking yourself, did Dan and John plan out their outfits? We have the answers for you. We did not. This happens to be happenstance, but as I like to say, great minds think alike. And we both happened to put these wonderful vests on today.
And I didn't get the memo, and I'm a little mad about it.
And Julie did not get the memo. Now, the more serious aspect of that, on the previous slide that Dan just showed, when he said, if we want to drill into these and open these up from that dashboard, and you'll see this later on in this webinar, but essentially what he's saying, anytime you see those fields like an Excel spreadsheet here, those are cases, those are activities, and you can simply click on those to get right to your work and open up that object. So I mean, for a lot of folks who have been using our solution for some time, this is actually where they come to get their work. Their analysts, their nurses, their MDs, all of it will be right here within their dashboards. But continue on, Dan.
Perfect. So not only the dashboards can be used as reporting as, a traditional reporting tool, but what we call filters within the actual where you go to find your casework can be used as reports. In this case, we have that, again, that Excel look and feel with the columns and rows of all the cases that are assigned to me, but also we can export these to Excel. So if you want to do any additional manipulation, the headers and footers of these are filterable, and there's different options that we'll show you shortly within there. But also you can choose a button up in the ribbon, display as dashboard. So even these filters you can display as a dashboard. And again, these are fully interactive. You could click on the different graph areas and it'll filter out the Excel area down in the bottom right. So we have that big picture kind of easily attainable for you. I told you PowerPoint was going to be short and sweet, so let's go into the actual solution now. So within and with the Kiriworks A&G solution, the Medicare and non-Medicare or universal solution, we have a number of canned reporting dashboards pre-built within the solution. So going through some of these, we can see they're all saved over here as Medicare or non-universal. I have some up in the top here, starting with the current inventory. And I pointed this out within the PowerPoint, but all of these reports can be interactive. And what we mean by that is that we have kind of filters on the fly, if you will. So I can click on an area. So let's say I want to review my grievances. I just simply click on the grievance within the graph. And I don't know if you saw that, but the other graphs automatically changed and gave me the current due of 3, new today 3, I have 55 active, 12 due within 72 hours, 25 7 days old, and 29.1 is the average age to completion, all right there by simply clicking that graph. I could easily go.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan. You were finishing up.
I could easily go back and reset that filter just by doing that, and we go back to the main dashboard.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, everybody loves dashboards because they look great, right? But they also provide you that data you're looking for. And for a lot of folks that are probably attending today, they may or may not have a solution like this, particularly from a non-regulatory perspective, right? The focus is always on regulatory, which we have. But then once we have that, what are we doing to get there, right? And that's kind of what you're describing here, Dan. And within each one of these, let's say that you don't have something visual like a dashboard today, but maybe you're lucky enough to at least have an export out of your system that will give you a list of every single case, right? But even then, you're exporting that, you're looking at it in Excel, you're then stacking all of that data to say, okay, how many grievances do I have? All right, well, how many of those now I have to look at the date fields? How many of those are due today? How many of those are new today? And that's a big thing that managers have to do on a weekly, on a daily basis. And that's time taken out of their day. Dan was able to open up this dashboard and click on one section of that pie and get the information he needed in a second or two. So it's not only is the information available to you, but how quickly and how actionable is that information available to you, as well as something like an age to completion. I'm sure that a lot of folks maybe have, okay, we have our list of cases that we've processed. Here's when they've come in. Here's when they were resolved. We have an average age to completion, but can you break that down by case type? Can you break that down by priority and whether or not it was pre or post service? Because all of us know that all of those have different timeframes. So an age to completion really doesn't mean much until you've drilled down into that specific type of case and that specific scenario. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's perfect. Yeah, so this dashboard doesn't have much of that Excel, the data that we're looking for. This is a great visual overview. This is available through the web client as well. So maybe you have a larger team and you have one of those flat screen TVs. We can post this up onto that TV and have it as like a live dashboard that your analysts, your users can see and monitor throughout the day. So we could have this refresh daily or every second, if you will, or every 5 minutes, whatever it may be, so that they can see this without having to go into the actual report. It could be up on your Teams monitor.
Yeah, and I can't, the name is escaping me, Dan. We don't have to throw it out there, but now you're saying that one of the really cool things that I think you and I were on a trip together, one of our customers use these dashboards for is exactly that same thing. And I don't think it was necessarily related to A&G, but it was related to their help desk, their support tickets. So on the screen, they just had an active dashboard. It was just tied to their intranet that they navigated to, and then everyone could see as the tickets were coming in, churning, being worked, so on and so forth. And it really just does give you that quick, actionable look as to where the team's at, how the health of the team is doing, and also their inventory. Are they being overloaded? Are they being overworked? Do I need to reallocate any folks onto a more severe ticket, so on and so forth?
Yep, exactly. All right, so moving on to another one of the canned reports, we have our 72-hour countdown. So again, same look and feel, just analyzing that data a little bit differently. So in this case, we have the original case assignment. So by analyst, if I select myself here, we can see that my cases automatically filtered at the bottom. So I can go in and do that. I could look at the current analyst assignment and see the counts for that. Again, we have the dial with the watermark set at 30. We're currently at 20, so we're 10 under our threshold there, so we're in a good spot. And then average expedited case age to completion. So how long did it take? So we're looking at 4.5, 3.7 to 5. So we're definitely over that 72 hours, but we need to work on that. So we could look at those details and see what exactly, why are we taking 5 days to close? Was it the member not sending paperwork back in time? Was it, a provider needed more details? What is it? So we can easily go in and just double click on the data down below and open up that case. So we can easily get to that data. We don't have to go, log out of Microsoft SQL reporting or Crystal Reports or what other reporting tool you're using, and then log into the appeals and grievance solution. We can easily get to that case right here from the reporting dashboard and do more detailed analysis.
Or if you're like me at all, and you may not be all the way there with all of your applications, you write it down on a Post-it note, right? The case number, and then you go into the other system and you look it up. Well, here you can just click on it, which again, when we're talking about time savings, it may not seem like a ton of time, but when you're doing this again and again and again, multiple times a day, it truly does end up being a big time savings. And as Dan pointed out, looking at the average expedited case age to completion, that's a great reactionary thing that we can look at throughout the year. Okay, well, this is something that we need to focus on, but it also allows you to be proactive, knowing that, hey, the next 72 hours can really make or break us. So I may need to reallocate some of Hannah's work over to Flory's, because Flory, we have the data right here in front of us. She typically processes them quicker. Now, Flory does have 11 cases, right? So maybe we give it to the next person that has the lowest expedited case age to completion, that has a little bit less in their inventory. So truly actionable information, allowing you to reallocate right from here is a very powerful aspect of just reporting in general.
Definitely. All right. I know John and I could spend a lot of time in reportings. We really like the reporting dashboards, but I'll move on for your benefits. The next one of our default reports is the activities report. So this allows us to view not only open activities, but those associated cases, filterable. So this is more of a manager view where we can see our full team, but as an end user, we can go in and potentially copy to new, and I'll show you that here after I go through all the default reports, how you can use this report to create your own individualized report. So again, we have those cards with our current cases open, expedited with open activities, how many open activities and due within 3 days of those open activities. Over to the right, we have the graph of the type of open activities, and we can easily see that count. And then again, we have the color coded for the ones that are overdue, due soon, and we have plenty of time to work on. So again, depending on how your users are going into their cases to work it, they could use this as their landing page to go directly to their activities by double clicking on that activity they're looking at and completing that activity from here by simply going up and choosing the task, or they could go into the case and then complete the activity from that case level. So like I said, at the end of this, after we review, I'll go in and show you how we can copy to new, essentially create a new report and then customize it to be more personalized for your user.
So one of the things I wanted to make sure we were bringing up here is, all right, we have our different activities, we have our different cases, and for those of you who are, maybe this is the first webinar that you're attending, so this is actually just a part of an entire series of appeals and grievances webinars that we are creating to step through the solution and show the value from that. Now, if you haven't tuned into the previous webinars, you may not be familiar with the term activities. Again, those are the actionable items that your analysts, your nurses, your MDs are completing on the case. Now, the majority of them are tied to your analyst, if that's a term that you use. And for some of them, they could be like an acknowledgement, right? Something that may be a little bit lower value. And if I'm an analyst playing that role, I can actually group all of my activities together, right? And I can knock out all of those initial acknowledgements right at once. And when you saw Dan pull up that activity, there was a button there. The other great part about that within the Kiriworks solutions, there's always just one button for the activities, and it will drive you and guide you through that task. It'll generate the correct letter, it'll create the right form for you to fill out, so on and so forth. So the point of showing this is, if I'm an analyst, I come in here and I have 10 different acknowledgements from cases that have come in today. I don't have to go into 10 different cases. I can come right here and perform all of my work and knock all of those out, and then come back to maybe some of those higher value activities later on. Again, really the value here is the ability to group and identify all that work and take action on it sooner than later.
The downside of doing a live demo. There we go. Sorry, it came up on another screen. But as John was talking, I clicked that generate letter and we had that activity come up. So you could do that easily from the reports. All right, so moving down to grievance breakdown, another standard report within the solution, where we have those top left grievance breakdown by month. I could hover over, get the counts for that month. By overall, where again, these are filterable graphs, so I can click on that and get to the data I need. So with grievances, maybe we want to review quality of care for certain providers. We can easily drill down into that. We have the active count of grievances right here, where looks like around 51. And we have our watermark set at 60, so we're 9 under, so that's good. And then active grievance breakdown by type there. So fraud and abuse, customer service, marketing, whatever it may be. And then again, the data. So if we want to drill down into that and get more details, which really, works out well when we're drilling down into maybe the quality of care. So when we go into contracting with these providers, we can review their cases to see if we want to contract again with them, or maybe we need to review our plan and look at how maybe we're paying out too much to a certain thing. We did something incorrectly on our plan. So we can use this to drill into that data to make changes down the road so that we're benefiting in the long run.
Yeah, and one quick thing, we talk about, what is the benefit of these potentially to other departments downstream, and I think Dan lined up a perfect example of that. If we think about our network team, what information are they asking us or not asking us? What can we provide to them? This is a perfect example of that. And we actually got I noticed we got a first question, Dan. Now I'll expand upon this, but the question was, what billing systems is this compatible with? And I'm glad that they mentioned billing systems, because a lot of this does come down to money, right? In the same way that in the example you gave, Dan, maybe we have some problem providers that we have a lot of quality of care grievances with, but we don't want to continue to pay that provider, right? Because we're having issues with them. So to answer this question, I guess I'll answer half of it and you can answer the other half, Dan. What billing systems is this a way for us to access your data? You are able to report on that data within this solution. And I'll kind of expand this question even more. Can we combine data from another system with this data, Dan?
Oh, definitely. So within the administration of the reporting dashboards, we create what we call data providers. Those are essentially how we're getting the data. That can be a SQL query. So we can easily write a SQL query to that billing system and pull in whatever data elements we want to match up with our cases within here. And that can be done fairly easily. I would say that that's not an analyst level or a, it would probably be more of an IT report when you're customizing at that level, but it can definitely done. We could hit any external SQL data source and bring it into the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one aspect of that we've typically gotten is, how can we augment the data that we already have, right? So chances are you have your member, your provider data stored somewhere in-house, right? Or in the cloud. Well, when we come in, we're going to ask to access that data because we need it for our appeals and grievances solution. But additionally, maybe there's some data on the member that you want from an appeals perspective that maybe the rest of the organization doesn't care about, right? Well, what we do is we build those lookups into your member systems, and we create that object within our solution and allow you to add onto that object. So whether or not it's, and an example is escaping me, Dan, on what's on a member, but just maybe it's a particular note, right, that we need to be able to track. All of that data that you add in this format is available within the reporting. And as Dan said earlier on, any piece of metadata tied to these cases, member, provider, claim auth, is reportable.
Yeah, I think one of the big ones is a status for at least the CSR teams. They want to see when a member calls in what the status is. So pushing that status to that system and having a look up back into the case to see where it's at. Status and notes, maybe.
Great point.
So moving on from the grievance breakdown is a timeliness report. Again, this one's a more data centric, but being able to filter down into year, month, quarter, having that card that gives the number right up front. Let's see if we can drill down here. So if I go into 2021, there we go. And then we go into March, we could see that we did not have any untimely, but again, we can use more interactive kind of a click and drag of a certain time period, and we can narrow that search down and find any data within that narrowed date range and be able to, looks like it's not refreshing fast, but we can easily go down into there. There we go, down by quarter. So again, being able to break that down by appeal, by drug appeal or grievance, and then finding the data for each appeal or grievance within that date range. And then not a standard report, but one that John and I are hoping to get in. We've been working with the product development team, and I'll let John kind of walk through this one since he built it, but this is a beta of kind of a master dashboard that encompasses all of these data elements at, right at a visual level.
Yeah, so I mean, if we look at, just at a breakdown of type of case, who submitted it, what level it is it administrative or clinical in nature, processing time, documents that we've created for it, all of that is right here. Not to say that this dashboard provides you an action to do, but if we need to be able to report on any of this, what's our average time to completion for an expedited grievance? We have that right here in the bottom left. If we need a breakdown between our clinical and administrative type appeals because we are, maybe we need to hire more clinical staff, we have that right here. And just like any other of the dashboards, these are all clickable. So if Dan were to click inside of that clinical aspect, it's going to update the rest of this dashboard with the appropriate counts. So again, these are dashboards are truly driven by our sales calls and our customers' suggestions. So, please don't hesitate if you do have questions, if you do have suggestions, or if you're not seeing something that you expected to see here, please let us know. Don't be shy, put those in the chat comments, and we'll be happy to discuss those.
Perfect. So before we move over to filters, I promised, I think it was within the activities of how an end user or a business analyst can easily use these canned reports that we provide with the solution to build new reports. So if we go back into our activities, out of the box, we have a generic filter that has all analysts within the solution selected. So if I wanted to build a personalized report for this, again, this is based on user rights, but there's this copy to new. Copy to new will essentially create a copy of this report. It's going to ask us if we want to make copies of the data providers. Earlier, I mentioned that data providers are how we get that data. We do not need to make a copy of those data providers. We can use the existing ones. And then from there, it's going to ask us to rename it or what we want to call that name. So we'll call it My Activities. And then if we wanted to add additional data providers, we could do that here.
And real quick, Dan, those data providers, like you said, that's how we get the data into the system. So if we talked about, and there was a question earlier about what billing system it's compatible with, this is that scenario where we'd say, hey, we have one data provider going to look into our solution. We have another one going to looking into your billing solution. And just simply by having those two data providers there is what's going to combine all of that data into this dashboard and allow us to interact and slice and dice that data from both sources at the same time.
Yeah, and one thing to point out is that you can have multiple data providers on a single dashboard. So having our activities combined with our billing system and combining those with that unique member ID or whatever that unique value is to combine those, you can have those that combined here. And then we provide access to it. So if maybe John's an analyst also and he wants to do something similar, I could add him and give him rights and he'll see this show up on his. But from there, we just click finish and it'll bring up our design tool once we click finish.
Now, the other nice thing is that comes up that I think is worth mentioning here is in a lot of solutions and a lot of reporting tools, there's a tool that you use to access the data, to view the reports, but then there's a separate tool that you use to go and create those dashboards and create how the data gets into those dashboards. Again, the nice thing about the Kiriworks solutions, it's all in one. You don't have to open up another tool to set up your reports or design them or set up how we're getting that data. It's all right here in the end user client.
Yeah, so from the design view, we could see our data source, which is that data provider. We have the single one. If we had a billing or a claim system, that would show up there as well. And then all of the attributes or the data elements that we're going to report on that come up with that. You can see also calculated fields. So if we wanted to build our own calculated field, like a date range or something like that, we could easily add that within there. But in this case, we're just going to go in and go into our filter. And then we have case to assign analyst is not null. So it's looking up there for essentially anything that's not blank. But I'm going to change it to equals, and then it'll bring up a drop down here. And the case assigned analyst, it'll automatically look into the solution and find that friendly name. So I'll pick Dan Smith. We'll click OK, and that will automatically filter based on that. So from here, all I have to do is save and close. And then my report that is automatically filtered down to my information is right there waiting for me. So now I don't have to go into the activities and then click the button, unselect everyone, then click my name. I have that report just sitting there ready and waiting.
Yeah, and just as a quick recap for those of you, in case you weren't paying close attention, so Dan didn't touch his keyboard other than to name it as my dashboard. And I'm glad that he brought up the point of those parameters. So in the case that you already have data in your system, the dashboard is going to allow you to actually select your own parameters from the data you have. So you don't even need to set those up. If you want to set up those parameters, you have that ability. And then again, within those, Dan and I could spend all day talking about dashboards again, but you saw Dan set it to his cases. There are both the combination of and or in those conditions, and the ability to nest them within one another. So if you're thinking, I'm not sure that this tool has the complexity that I need to create the reports of the data I want, I would certainly challenge that, because between the combination of those custom fields, those calculated fields, and the rules within it, I don't think we've run into an issue that we could not report on yet, Dan.
No, it's definitely a very robust. I used to work at the Cleveland Clinic where I did crystal reports, and I like this reporting tool so much better. Not only, I would say the biggest advantage is that you can actually get to the data and get to the cases directly from the report, but it's live and active and very interactive. So.
That's a really good point as well, because while a lot of them do it, there's still a lot that don't give you, like you're saying, the active preview as you're configuring it, right? It's almost like I need to configure it and I need to go save and then reset and then go pull up the other tool elsewhere and then check on it. This is giving you feedback to your configuration right away.
Exactly. Just a quick view. Before the webinar, I did the exact same thing with the 72-hour countdown. So I created the filter so that it only brings up my data. So I have a much more simplified dashboard pointed to my data only. So you could definitely, once you get used to the system and play around in there, you can easily copy to new, create a report from the existing, figure out what data elements we defaulted in there. And then if you don't like it, you could easily just go in and delete that report and start over and build a new one. It's as easy as that. Before we move on to the other reporting aspect, which we call filters within the actual appeals and grievance application, I just want to do a quick tour of the ribbon up here. So I know sending out reports, a lot of managers sometimes don't want to log into the system to look at the reports, so they want to see those reports. So we can easily print a PDF, save to an image. We can upload additional information. We can export that data from to Excel directly from this button. It's super quick. Again, that's just going to be the data when we do the export to Excel. That it won't include the image. We could email from here, mail recipient, or save it to our personal page, and then share would be, I could share it to another member that has rights within the solution.
And there's always going to be a need to potentially export this data or just share like a screenshot of it. But the only knock on that is that that data isn't live, right? It's the moment that you took that in time. And typically whenever we receive the question of, well, how can I send this to someone who doesn't have access to the solution? You can use any of those methods that Dan highlighted, but our preference would be the original one that Dan highlighted earlier in the webinar, where we're simply throwing this on your intranet, right? There is a web client available. All that functionality is available in the web. And the best part about throwing it on the web is you don't need to log in, right? We would set up an auto login or a generic login for that. So anyone who has access to the intranet can now access that dashboard, particularly for things that have a wider audience, right? That maybe they don't have access to the solution proper, but we still want them to be able to access this. Well, I don't have to package this dashboard up anymore and send it to my boss every week. I've sent them a link one time. I tell them favorite it and check in whenever you would like.
Great point. All right. So let's move on to the other reporting aspect, which are filters within the application. I'm going to be going into our Medicare appeals and grievances. Within there, we have filters. And as soon as this comes up, it goes into my cases by default. So this is every case that is assigned to me. So right off the bat, you have all of this data to mine. The first thing we can do is display it as a dashboard. So maybe we are a visual worker and we want to see this data displayed in those graphs. We can easily do that. It gives us some options to display it in certain ways based on the data elements we built within this filter. But in this case, we're doing it based on decision and case status. So we have that decision. Most of these should be pending because they're still active, unless it's a level 2. But then again, the graphs filter the data. So if I click on pending, awaiting case summary, it'll narrow that down here at the case level. And then I have my data, which again, we can go into the case from here, or we can use this data and filter based on the column headers. So we have the due date. We can click on the equal sign. Maybe we want to see, less than, and then when I go into the date, I could put in a specific value, or it comes up with top 10, bottom 10, tomorrow, today. I want to see less than today, so everything less than yesterday. Next week, last month, there's all this default filtering mechanisms built into the solution based on the data type that is in there. So we can really drill down and get to and use these filters for reporting. So if I go back to more of the standard filter view, I mean, right off the bat, it looks like Excel. So if you work in Excel, you can see Excel characteristics. Again, with the filtering, we don't have to click the header to add filters within Excel. It's all built into here. So if I want to do a search of, let's say, wildcard, and I could just do a type ahead with a wildcard, and it'll bring up all my grievances if I type ahead. So think of all the data elements you have within your appeals and grievance solutions and how you can sort and filter and get to that data. And then, maybe export it and send it off to your manager to, really put ahead the need to hire an additional analyst. You have this data all built in, and it's canned. It comes with the solution.
Yeah, and the really powerful thing for me in this is that uh, I live in Excel. I would like to think that I'm pretty good at Excel formulas, but I find myself going to Google and saying, how do I do this in Excel often, right? And if I wanted to be able to, let's say, stack the case type, um, I don't know how to do that off the top of my head in Excel, but if Dan just grabs that column and drags it into that gray area, it'll do that for him automatically. So, I found that when I need to accomplish something like this, oftentimes I actually take the data out of Excel and I put it into OnBase so I can get the data that I want. And the other thing that Dan highlighted with the dates, I think is really important too, because the solution is contextually aware of the type of data it is, right? So if it's, an alphanumeric, like your case type, it will have certain types of functionality for that column. But let's say it's a date, and Dan highlighted that, tomorrow, yesterday, next week, next quarter, Q1, Q4. As everyone knows, dates are very important in the A&G world. And regardless of what you're reporting on, chances are there is some aspect of a date. And having that functionality right here within these filters, that you might be able to do in Excel, you probably have to look up. This just makes it a lot easier on you. And it's something that I've grown to just be a huge, huge fan of that, folks typically overlook, right? Because it's what we would call standard functionality, but it is very, very powerful.
Definitely. So moving on to the filters. So top level filter bar, underneath each filter bar, we have the filters. Underneath my work are reports. So this will be more all the cases within the system, how we can do a search on those. So we can have users enter data to find exactly, exact case or exact type. We can have cases due this month. This is all, again, default built into the solution. Cases created this month, open cases by analyst, open cases by queue, so where it is within that solution. I'll just do a generic search here, and it'll bring up that graph. So again, having dashboard look and feel within the filters, and then maybe unassigned or missing required information cases within the solution. So again, easily getting to that data, being able to filter down, sort, filter, do custom logic, all within the headers of the information.
One other thing that I often forget to do, and we usually talk about it on the when we're talking about the universes, Dan, but one of the things that I love, and it's an Excel type functionality, is the auto size column widths. So for whatever reason, they come out standard, but if you just want to be able to tighten everything up, it's a single click. And again, seems small, but for me, it's just a feature I love. I can get all of my data as tight as possible in one page in one view.
Exactly, and it's simple, just a click of a button.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could reset it if we want to.
Yep.
Different options in there, and then we could save those filter settings as well. So if you want it always tight, you can do that. So as you can see with these filter headers or filter bars, there's numerous built-in or canned filters that we built. So many with reconsiderations, grievances, redeterminations, inquiries, complaint tracking. I'm logging in as a manager or administrator of the system, so I'm seeing some of the system setup options and some of the system filters that we have built in. But also those compliance reports that we're going to do another webinar specific to those, because there's a lot of detail within those. But there's numerous options, and with all the pre-built, if you still can't find the data that you want to display or you want to report on, we have the user defined It might take some scouring of the system or the documentation to find the exact data element and the wording of it, or the what it's actually called on the back end on the database. But from here, we can easily create our own filter, so our own report of the solution. So we name it. And this doesn't even really have to bring back data that you need to review. Maybe you just want to count of how many cases you created last week. You can easily, as you can see within the filters, we have a count right next to it. So maybe you just want to get a quick report card of how you did last week, the previous week, the past 30 days. You can easily create this on your own and have it right there at your fingertips. So, you know, at I3 or Kiriworks, we are going through review season. I could easily just go and put this in my review that John could look at, and I'll have it right there. I don't have to go searching for it. So I chose the class, which is the case, and then within that case, let me expand this here. You can see all the many different data elements that we're tracking within the solution. So as a, you know, if this is the first time you're logging in, this might make your brain explode. But as you work the case and you see what the naming conventions are, you'll easily be able to build your own case. So I know that I want, and there's a type ahead feature. So I know I want to do a case number because that's important. So this is, we're currently building out our columns. So this would be what you're viewing once you run that case. Maybe I want to do the age and days. Let's see, and then I want to do the analyst. So who's actually working? I'm going to use a friendly name so we can actually read that. Status is always a good one. So even if it's not the first word, you just type in status, we can bring that up. What's another good field, John?
Let's do priority. And as Dan's adding that, you know, we're coming up on the end of the hour here, but I want to just touch on the user entry and the fixed constraints. So earlier you saw Dan run a filter where we wanted the user to input something. So we can require that and specify the field here. We can even fix the constraint, right? So if you have a very large volume, you probably don't want your folks running a query against 50,000 cases, right? Well, you create a fixed constraint to only run those on open cases or only closed cases or so on and so forth. So you have that ability from all three aspects when you create your own right here.
So once we click save, my report is now here. Let's see, I did that constraint, so we have to enter in the friendly name. I'll do a search for me. And then it brings up all my expedited cases. So you can see I have 4 here. Earlier, I created a my expedited. I've got that quick hit number. So if maybe this report doesn't bring back the actual columns, but I have a count right there that I can see exactly what my data is within the solution. So if you have the user rights to create these, it is a very powerful tool to get to the data that you want and need for your daily work.
And one other thing that we didn't mention, I think it's assumed here, but within even these filters, these user-defined ones that you create yourself, again, each line item here allows you to click directly into that object to do more research, process, so on and so forth.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah, so if you want any more information, well, it's going to start over at the beginning for me. So again, Kiriworks Appeals and Grievances. We have the full solution for you from front to end. We just showed you the reporting. That's, you know, the most important there. And then any questions, if you need help with your reports, we can definitely help you out. If you're an existing customer or a prospect, we can provide a overall solution demonstration and show you how you can get to this.
All right, so
I
I
love it.
don't see any other questions coming through. Go ahead, Julie. I'm sorry for
I was
interrupting
just
you.
going to say the ones that I saw, I think you guys addressed about being able to take data that is not in the solution, report against it, combining it with other solutions, and then exporting the data. All of those folks had some questions around that, but I think we covered all of that. And I want to thank both of you for your time. This is the end almost. I mean, we're up against it of our session. And I'd like to thank you, Dan Smith and John Schwischer, for sharing your insights with us. For the attendees, please do take a minute to grab the handouts that are available about our A&G solution, and then watch your email for a link to today's recording, and we'll have information about how you can access the other webinars we've done on A&G topics that John referenced earlier today. And on behalf of Kiriworks, Dan and John, I thank each of you for your time. Enjoy the
Thank
rest
you
of your
all.
day.
Thanks all.